This is a Play Your Way Network presentation. Get the full story at PlayLifeYourWay.com. In a world where comics, movies, games, rumors, and Kardashians come at you 24/7, three champions will rise to defend you from wasting precious time, money, and emojis. BK, Nate, and Derreck will show you how to do it the player way.
Ladies and gentlemen and everyone in between, with all due respect, this is your resident podcast DJ BK, helping you understand how to curate your entertainment
the player way.
And I never do this thing alone. Brought to you by the scrumptulescent, the best clothes that you can wear for grind time, Agency Cartel. You can catch that at Agency Cartel. This show is sponsored by them. Get you some right now. And because of those brilliant people, we have these awesome co-captains. My co-captain's Derreck.
That's me. You corrupting the system. You already know. Coming off a wonderful weekend.
Exactly. Corrupted his own system. And Nate.
It's me. Calling from LA at 95 degrees today.
Woo! Is that like a cool 95 or is it like a swarmy 95?
Oh, it's like hot. Damn hot. Like born on the fucking sun.
Damn.
Yeah.
It's kind of, you know what's funny? We had a day like that recently here in Atlanta, and I was like, it's a little like, for all those times that you were like, man, it's too damn cold, and then it gets hot like that, you're like, okay, it's not August yet, calm down. Enhance your calm. So hopefully you're gonna get some rain when it juts up to being hot like that. Hopefully it's gonna be a little bit of rain there for you.
I don't know. We had an earthquake last week.
Yeah, I know. I texted you like immediately right after.
Here, you know. Yeah, you did, and thank you for checking up on me.
You know how we got some fans out there when people start texting you and it's like, "Hey, is Nate okay?" People have never met Nate before.
I was working at the time, and like my chair just kind of shook a little bit, and I just kind of continued on with my life. You know, I live in downtown. I don't live in a high rise. It's a 5-story building. I'm about 15 miles away from the water. So I know if there was a bad earthquake and a tsunami were to come, I'm far enough away that, you know, the big wave wouldn't hurt me. Nor is my building
unless it's the big one.
Yeah.
Unless it's the big one. And then we're all
if it was
all
like
the way
a
to Sheboygan.
San Andreas type of quake, because downtown LA got fucked up in that movie. And
in which case, do you really want to be alive in that world? Like, do you really? World with no Walmart? I don't know if I want to be alive. I think I want to be gone. No Taco Bell, no fourth meal. I don't know. I think I kind of want to be like, all right, well, we had a good run, but it's time to get on with it. You know, that's what's up. So ladies and gentlemen, everyone in between, it is episode 47 of the Play Your Way podcast, brought to you by the Play Your Way Network and Agency Cartel Clothing for grind time done.
The player way.
And if you are just now joining us, congratulations, you hit the lottery. You are part of the greatest blitzcast available to you online, where we talk about the coolest stuff around. So if you're the type of person that works 40 to 50 hours a week and you don't have time to curate media and figure out what's going on, we do the 9 to 5 Monday through Friday curation. You can go to our website, PlayLifeYourWay.com, PlayYourWayPodcast.com, or PlayYourWayNetwork.com, even PYWNetwork.com. But yeah, you can go to all of those URLs and you can get you a little bit of dosage of curating media.
The player way.
A little bit what's on the site today. Cardi B's new album, Invasion of Privacy, is on there. Darius did a video, quick review on there. You can also see his more well thought out review and what you need to know about that. If you're the type of guy who doesn't listen to hip hop too often, or if you listen to hip hop a lot and you're like, I don't know if I want to get into what's popping with the shmoney lady. He gives you an understanding of what's going on there, and he's the type of guy that loves Run the Jewels. He likes, MF Doom. He's the type of dude that likes Wu-Tang. So it's not the type of thing he would listen to. Guys, you two, if you both have listened to hip-hop in your time, I highly encourage it. It's a lot of fun, and your girls will like it when you play it for them. On top of that, if you have had a weekend, probably like Derek and I, we both... during these sporting events, we hit these sports entertainment events, should I say? We both hit up a lot of. I made cheeseburger jalapeno sliders at home.
Oh my!
It was amazing. It was with
so
Hawaii, with that Hawaiian with the Hawaiian bread. Split it right. Split the whole loaf in half, and then made like one big patty,
nice.
Big square patty of beef, and made it nice and thin. Got the cheese, layers of cheese.
Always be training. Always be training.
Hey, always be training. Fresh, hot, small, square at my house. Had a little White Castle action in my house, and it was scrumptious. My wife said I killed it. And when you cook your wife something real good, it gives her that. Exactly. And then I clean. Then I clean the kitchen up afterward.
Bitch, what?
Then I did some dishes.
Bitch, what?
Boy, you know
who raised you? Got that Renaissance man.
Cash in the. Hey, had to cash in the coupons.
Coupons, all right.
Anyway,
that's a true Renaissance man.
So that's what's exactly. So anyway, so we did that. So if you're like us and you ate way too much, you OD'd on calories and beer. Shout out to Youngling. Love Youngling beer. So what I did is we got Johnny Watcher, shout out to Johnny on our website. He put together this really cool article talking about what Tom Hardy had to do to get in shape for Venom. And it's a good thing he's getting his body in shape, because it's looking like we're not going to see any symbiote suit at all in this film. So, we get to see what's going on with Tom Hardy's body. Really cool article. So if you want to get in shape, Motivation Monday, go on the website. We got that. Also, by the time this podcast comes out, there will be a really cool movie review with contributing writers Derreck and myself, and also Jay. We all have these really cool reviews of upcoming films. A Quiet Place. Jay did A Quiet Place. I did. What was the one I did?
Blockers.
I did. Blockers. It's because the reason why I have a hard time remembering the name of that movie is because it should be just called Cock Blockers.
Yeah.
But they just didn't go all the way with it, which that kind of...
Is that a premise of the movie?
It gives you a signal. It was a warning sign. It was a warning
sign.
Shot. Like that.
Warning shot.
And then...
Across the bow.
Exactly, warning shots.
Oh.
Got 5 warning shots in the back. Exactly. Sir... Put the gun down. This is just a shower rod. Anyway, and then Derek he went and saw A Quiet Place as well, but we couldn't have 2 reviews, so he ended up re-upping on
Pacific Rim
Uprising. Pacific Rim Uprising, exactly. So all 3 of those will be in that, but it's told a whole lot more polished than the way I just did it. I totally just flubbed that up. But anyway. Let's get on with it. Let's do a little deep tissue massage on what you guys did this weekend. We'll start off with Nate, and then we'll let Derek kind of lead into the conversation about the films we watched this weekend.
All right.
Well, I watched the same movie Derek did.
Oh.
Yeah.
Which one?
Quiet Place.
Nice. Let's get on with it then. A Quiet Place. You guys saw it. You guys take the lead.
Well, all right. I was going to say, and I fucking watched WrestleMania, too.
Oh, we get there. We're gonna get there too. We'll go ahead.
Quiet Place. Jim Halpert did an amazing job.
Yes, he did.
Fucking acting, directing, and writing. I mean, there's not much to write because it is 98% a silent movie, but it is.
Imagine that script had to be so like, this is what you see, and this is what happens.
Double spaced.
Yeah. When you got to turn in that article at the last minute and you haven't been.
But honestly, it's a fantastic movie. like when we do our horror top 5, this is very well may take an appearance in my list because it was awesome. The way they
don't spoil it.
Oh, you haven't watched?
I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen it yet.
Well, it's done very well.
Yeah,
it's done.
In fact,
very
what I'm
well.
gonna do?
Very suspenseful.
In fact, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my headphones off and let you guys do a little bit of spoiler cast. How about that?
All right, we'll give you that signal when we're all ready to go.
You guys go ahead.
All right, man. The opening scene
Yeah.
all before just woke me up and told me, I'm like, okay, I am in for a serious movie and every character is at risk. Every character is at risk.
Know. And the way they just kind of build suspense up. I mean, doing it with the lack of sound and, the score just getting more and more. And you realize stuff's coming. But
absolutely.
The part this is jumping on forward through the movie, but, when Emily Blunt is going into labor.
Oh,
man. My God. And her stepping on the nail to, you could tell. I wanted to scream
stressful
for her.
I was like, please, just hang on a little bit more. Bit more.
She's in the bathtub, and God, she's still holding quiet. You see the monster behind her.
Oh my
walking
God!
Through the hall.
Contractions.
When they finally shoot off the fireworks, and she lets out
just
that
lets loose.
bone-chilling scream.
Yes.
Oh my God, that to me I was like exquisite acting. First off,
it was exquisite acting. Like when that happened, I felt some sort of release as well because I was like, oh, I forgot I've been holding my breath. I think I was about to pass out.
The whole time throughout that entire scene, it's just
very
oh my God,
tense.
it's so well done, and
you just know when she was carrying the laundry up that somebody's going to step on that nail and it's just going to be the end of you just knew it was coming, and then it was her. I thought it was going to be him coming back and being like, what the hell happened here?
Or I thought it was going to be the daughter. Because at first they didn't let her in when, he stopped her from going downstairs. Yeah. So I thought it was going to be her that ends up stepping on it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was... It was stressful. It was intense. It was a great thriller. It was so well acted. You're right. Jim Halpert nailed it. and Emily Blunt.
Dude, heartbreaking.
Yes.
Halpert, yeah. Like the minute I kind of was hoping he would survive, but the minute he got gashed the first time, I was like, oh, man, don't. Do
I know.
This to me.
I didn't want it to happen.
My heart.
Like any other option, I'm like, just throw the axe against the gate. So anything, man. Oh man. Yeah. And then the monsters, how their whole head was pretty much an ear and a mouth, and that's it.
Which that was my one wonder. Like coming out of the movie, I was sitting there. Okay, you see the clippings. On his little collage he made downstairs where people are like, oh, it's sound, that's what. Why didn't people figure out beforehand to kind of overstimulate
some sort of sonic
that sort
weapon?
Of sense? Yeah, I would think we have
I know it was showed.
That,
it was like
right?
it was showing because it was a year and a half in. But then what I was wondering, I was like, well, maybe it's a way where it's a lack of communication because because you remember his radio signal was down, so that kind of let us know he doesn't really have much contact with the outside world other than seeing torches in this village. So I'm like, what if they've already come up with some sort of sonic weapon and they just don't know about it just because they don't have a newspaper guy, they can't check anything. And I was wondering, I'm like, I was like, maybe they just don't know, and they're trying to, but they're still such an intense opponent that they can't really, these things were shearing through metal like it was hot, a hot knife through butter. So I'm like, man, I bet they really had a hard time trying to defeat these things. But I'm glad they didn't go too much into what all that background. You just had to be in that moment with the family.
Yeah, they didn't really need to. Like the person I saw with, they were kind of wondering oh, why didn't they go into what happened? And then I had to explain. It's like, well, you saw on the newspaper clippings, a meteorite hit Mexico. That's exactly. I personally I enjoyed that. It's like I don't need to know the origin
it's perfect.
Of these monsters. I know
it lets you know enough.
Deadly beasts. Yeah.
It forces you to almost put your trust in the characters. You're like, well, I can't make my own decisions because I don't know the whole story. They know much more than me, so you just have to almost follow along and be like, all right, yeah, I guess this is just how we live now. Though I was like, we're going to go teach our son the world 10 days before due date and take all day to do this. Like, I was hoping they were going to be gone like 2 to 4 hours and back before sundown.
And decide to have the baby at that.
Yes. Right after it happened, Priscilla and I looked at each other. I'm like, why did they decide to bring a child? And then I was wondering, was she maybe pregnant while they were at the beginning of the movie? Was she already pregnant then, perhaps? That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, because they didn't say how much time had passed between.
Yeah, they never did that. No. So I was just assuming that this was, either shortly thereafter, But man, I really enjoyed this movie. It was a great film, very well done. I figured you want to close that book that way we can let BK live again.
Kudos to Jim Halpert, man.
Absolutely. Great. It's nice to see that him and Pam are doing well in his directorial movies.
Right, I think I got the thumbs up to come back.
Absolutely.
It is. As a person who has never gone through that on this podcast before, that is agonizing to see the joy on y'all's faces.
Dude, you watched the wrong movie this weekend, man.
You took one for the team. Literally, you actually did.
Yes, and Derek and I even talked about that, because when we talked about what movies we were going to watch for the weekend, I specifically said I wanted to see that, but he was like he was going to see that. I was like, all right, well, I got Movie Pass. I can take the L. So I'm probably going to go see it tonight.
Worth it.
Honestly, the way y'all's faces look, just so that when I'm editing this tomorrow morning, because man, looks like it was amazing.
It's a good movie. I'll say it challenges your manhood.
Say it exceeded what I say. It exceeds what you thought it was going to be in the preview.
We'll see
the trailer
shortly after the Super Bowl, because I only saw the trailer once, and it was during the Super Bowl, and we mentioned it after. Right. Of course, Super Bowl was a much bigger story. I remember I'm like, this was the one trailer, because we talked about trailers from the Super Bowl with Jurassic Park, but I was like, A Quiet Place. That one really looked interesting, and it lived up to everything and exceeded for me personally. And I had high expectations knowing he directed it, so it's definitely worth it.
Just going to boxofficemojo.com. A Quiet Place, according to Brad Brevet. Shout out to Brad Brevet. But A Quiet Place delivers a not so quiet 50 million opening, which is kind of impressive when you realize that Blockers came out with John Cena the same weekend as WrestleMania, so they only did around 21 million, which is still kind of impressive, because then you also got Ready Player One. And then, of course, Black Panther, it topped Titanic this past weekend for third highest grossing domestic release of all time.
Wow.
It's probably going to – I don't see it going any higher than that. The drop-off at this point is too close to everything else. So we'll see. But it depends. It just depends. I haven't looked at those numbers, so it could be that those numbers are a game of inches. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's still being released in a few countries, toward the, so I mean, that could still be an influx, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I heard that, there was an Asian country, I believe it was, that it go ahead.
Saudi Arabia, actually, was another one.
Yeah, that lifted their, it was like a 30-year ban on films or something
exactly,
like that. Yeah. It was like, okay, we have to see this film, exactly, so that's awesome. But yeah, I love that we're coming out of that slump during March, and now we're getting to stuff that people actually want to see. Talking about Blockers, you guys don't need to get off of the headset for this. It's a comedy. It's a comedy in the same spirit of Superbad or American Pie, that like a lot along those same lines, but it doesn't go as far as those films do, and as a result, you don't appreciate it as much. I did like that the actors that they chose as the kids in the families actually kind of were more like kids. They kind of they tried to do the sex pact thing that they did in American Pie, but instead of with guys, they did it with females. And the problem with that is, as much as women work differently. As a man who's been with a woman for a long period of time, women think differently. I've been with the same woman since I was almost in my teens. women, they just think differently, and what they're going after is very different. They kind of answer to that, and then in other ways they don't. They fell into that same trap a lot of films fall into, where they're trying to check off all of the multiracial and multi-sexual preferences for the sake of it. It doesn't serve the story any. There's also too much parents in it. I know the whole draw of it is that the parents are supposed to be cock blockers, but like the movie is not called Cock Blockers, they don't actually cock block anything. I mean, essentially they raise irresponsible kids who know what they're doing, and it's kind of boring. What would have been much better is if the kids were jackasses and they had something to actually be, sorry about. So anyway, it ended up there was no cock being blocked, really. There was only one scene where John Cena did throw a dude up against the wall, but he played a character who didn't really do that much, and it was kind of out of his character to hit the kid. So it was weird that when he did it, it's like, you're supposed to be the Mr. Mom type of dude. So anyway, he was kind of like an actual physical version of he was kind of like a live action version of that guy from the Emperor's New Groove, who's supposed to be a bad guy, but he's not a bad guy.
Gotcha.
Played by the same guy on Family Guy who does the wheelchair guy. So anyway, it was a good feeling. It was a good movie. It was more or less a coronation of John Cena arriving as an actor, and he does a really good job in it. And if you're a big John Cena fan, it's great to go see it for that. Not quite.
But
there we go.
Could you even see him in it, though?
Oh, yeah. Well,
and his name is...
and that brings up an interesting conversation, because I feel like whereas Dwayne Johnson could make that transition out of that name, John Cena is his real name.
Yeah.
So it's, I don't know what he's gonna do when he's trying to transition, because that's the thing, is you're always gonna have those jokes. He even made some of those jokes when he was on Desus and Mero. But anyway, it was okay. I really did wish I saw A Quiet Place. But I didn't fret too much, because the weekend had plenty of entertainment around. Friday night was the Hall of Fame induction for the 2018 class of WWE superstars. One of my favorite superstars of all time, Mark Henry. I look like an illegitimate child of his. If you've listened to the podcast, you know what I look like. I look like a kid of his with lighter skin. But yeah, so especially when I had cornrows. but no, man. Now, sexual chocolate.
I will never forget one of the best gags was him and Mae Young. Oh, the hand situation. Don't even want to get me started on most.
But when he really hit his stride is when he became to me, one of the best WWE moments, probably top 10, is when he originally, you thought he was going to retire. He came out in the salmon colored suit, and he actually cried. He had tears in his eyes and everything, and talking about how he was retiring, and people came out to greet him or whatever, but it was really just a ploy. And he just started beating people up, and he started this new persona called the Hall of Pain. And he ended up winning the WWE Championship, and his whole reign was called the Hall of Pain, where he'd bring somebody in, and he was like, "I'd like to induct you into the Hall of Pain. Beating people up, that's what I do." I mean, I'm saying, and he would come out, he would do stuff like beat up cars, and he would just tear stuff up. It was crazy, dude. So
oh my God,
he's one of my best WWE superstars. What I love also about that whole championship run of his is they actually talked about how he did a shoot where he talked about, which if you don't know what a shoot is, it's when you actually go on the microphone and they let you talk without cutting your microphone, and you say whatever you want to say, even if you break character. And he talked about, at the beginning of his championship reign, about how he should have been way further in his career, but because he's one of the brown boys, he never made it. He's like, yeah, you let Rocky in, but Rocky's mixed with something else. Like, you ain't let a true black dude in, and so like he actually.
Oh wow, he played that card, huh?
So he went there with it, and it was because everybody knew it was true. He should have been a lot further in his career.
Yeah,
he literally came in as the world's strongest man. Like, literally, that's what he did. And he came in around the same time as Kurt Angle, but you saw their careers went, both legitimate athletes, guys who have actually been to the Olympics, won medals, but one guy's career went one way and another guy's career went a different way. And it's not because one guy's personality was worse than the other, because the other guy, every time his music played, you'd hear, "You suck.
you suck. You
exactly.
suck."
Exactly. And of course, the Dudley Boys, they also were inducted.
Yes.
They ended up being the first tag team of the trio.
Edge and Christian and Hardy Boys.
The TLC.
TLC
exactly.
matches.
So they ended up being,
my God.
Exactly. And basically the other one said that if it wasn't for the Dudley Boys, that wouldn't have worked, which is true, because the only reason why you had the concerto and the ladders is because the tables were there first.
Yeah.
So the T did arrive on the scene first.
Yeah.
So shout out to Matthew. We are the table, indeed. So that's one of those things where, it was great induction. They also had Ivory, which from the Attitude Era, you definitely know who that is.
Oh yeah.
Goldberg. I don't know if you knew about Ivory, but you know that show that you guys love, Glow, based on a true story. She's the only wrestler that made it out of Glow that big.
Oh wow. I didn't realize that.
Yes.
I did not realize that.
So she was actually part of the glorious. It makes me want to watch that show and figure out which character she is.
Yes, because I watched Glow and I'm trying to place. I'm like, who would she have been based on? There's also another documentary on Netflix actually regarding the glamorous ladies of wrestling. There's a true documentary that's actually a pretty good little watch. If you wanted to start with that and go into the show, that's definitely Corrupting the System's recommendation.
And what's the name of that show?
It's Glow, the Glorious Ladies of Wrestling. It actually is a documentary about the true events surrounding what that show is based on.
Same name. Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah.
So same name. Mm-hmm. So I'll do it exactly that way. He just made that recommendation.
The player way.
Indeed. So that's what that. And then of course they rounded out with Jeff Jarrett, which it was a real surprise. He was the surprise because Jeff Jarrett is one of those guys who always went a different direction with his career. He was more allied with the foundation of Impact Wrestling, TNA. So to see him being inducted, it really adds legitimacy to the WWE's Hall of Fame truly being the real Wrestling Hall of Fame. And it's one of the reasons why even if WWE tanks, it'll sustain itself because it's becoming subsumed with the legacy of wrestling itself as opposed to all of these other things that are more territorial. Mm. And then, of course, they had Hillbilly Jim, and they also had Goldberg, which was cool, too.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. And when he came out for his speech, they actually did the entrance where he comes out, but he was in a tuxedo when he came down the hallway.
Nice.
So
Goldberg was...
It was cool. But literally...
He was that dude.
He was the biggest WCW wrestler. Yeah. He was it. He was a Stone Cold.
He had the biggest moment when they brought him out during WrestleMania too. He was the only one where he got an entrance. Yeah. Everybody else was just sort of standing there.
Yeah, every year they always have one who is the standout draw, and they actually get to do their entrance one last time before they retire. So yeah, it was really cool. He did an awesome job with it too. Moving on along, Nate had a perfect segue. So when we had Saturday night NXT in New Orleans, which is the developmental league of WWE, they had their thing there. That was an okay event. I didn't like who ended up winning the coronation of the U.S. title, but it doesn't matter because I wasn't watching that anyway. I was watching, as real as it gets, UFC 223. That's right, baby. How can you not know anything about UFC last week? If you're not a fan of UFC, you definitely knew something about it because even TMZ was covering it. Conor McGregor went full Tupac and decided he wanted to. Somebody was talking trash to one of his friends who was on the fight card. Man got on a private jet, flew over here from Ireland, Dana White didn't even know he was in town. Came right over to the what's the name of the center that the
Barclays.
Brooklyn Nets play at?
Barclays Center.
Barclays. Went right over to Barclays. If y'all have not seen the video,
through a dolly,
on YouTube,
through a window,
cut up the face of Michael Chiesa, a fighter who was fighting on the card. He ended up not fighting, and he ended up filing a lawsuit and a restraining order because that man lost money. That man probably lost at least $50,000 because he didn't get to fight. Because if you don't fight, you don't get paid. Now, Dana did say that he did. He was going to pay all the fighters who were hurt in the situation, obviously, because they're going to avoid lawsuit. But he still can recoup for whatever extra money he would have made for sponsors, any of his sponsors who might have paid him for just appearing. Possible bonuses for Fight of the Night, I'd sue for those as well. Rose Namajunas almost dropped out of the fight. Everybody was wondering if she was going to drop out of the fight, but she ended up coming back and winning her bout, so she is and still the strawweight champion. And then, of course, the person who was the target of the dolly and the guardrails and the chairs and everything else that was thrown, Khabib Nurmagomedov, the Eagle, he had a crazy week because outside of that, if that wasn't enough, his as of Sunday, April Fool's Day, the guy he was supposed to fight, Tony Ferguson, because everyone talked about how Tony Ferguson wore these glasses inside, and people make fun of him for all the time. He ended up tripping over some cables that he couldn't see because he was wearing sunglasses in a dark area behind the scenes and messed his knee up. And everybody busted his ass on Twitter and on podcasts. Bet you ain't gonna be wearing those sunglasses indoors no more. So then it moved on. Max Holloway, a champion of a higher weight class, ended up stepping up, and it looked like he was gonna work out, but then apparently he came in a lot heavier than people thought he was. He got within 5 pounds of losing the weight. It still had 48 hours to do it. But the New York State Commission pulled him because they were worried about his health. What that means is he was a lot heavier than a lot of people thought. It's speculated that he was somewhere around 190 and he had to get down to 154.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he was probably at 159 when they pulled him. That's incredible. In only 4 days to lose that kind of weight. That is insane. That's
not normal. That's not normal, man.
That is not normal to lose that kind of weight. It made me question my whole life. Like, how can I not lose the weight that I have? I can lose that kind of weight and just. It's called money. That man's got all kind of money to be able to make that happen.
Yeah,
what that is.
You got him in a sweatsuit 24/7. Exactly.
Yes. He got five. He got 5 big black dudes around him every time he picks up food. Smack his hand down.
That's it. Down. That's really all I need.
I need that.
That's all I need. That's really what I need.
It's like a dude who can actually legitimately beat me up. That can legitimately beat me up.
Yeah, that really makes me. That makes me second think myself. Yes, me to be like, get a wild hair, be like, I could take at least this guy, but then remember that he has another friend that's just as tough as him, and you're just like,
you got to get the.
Let me just get one Oreo, just one Oreo on a dip, and you try to run, and they just tackling you. Wow, that's all I need. Terry Crews, I need Terry Crews on the top.
All I need in this life is a big black best friend. All right, so anyway, which for you have a big black best friend, but the problem is he likes to eat
with
more
me.
Than you do. So as far as I'm like, hey, one wing ain't gonna hurt.
It ain't gonna hurt, And then I'm getting a 50-pack from Wingstop,
exactly.
sobbing in the corner.
Lemon pepper, exactly. It's so good. All right, and then Khabib ended up. After Max Holloway ended up dropping out. They put up another guy. I can't remember his name at the moment, but he ended up asking for way too much money, so they had to drop him out. So they ended up with Al Iaquinta, Raging Al Iaquinta. And what was cool about him is he's kind of got that Brooklyn, New Jersey thing about him. So the crowd that would normally go for Khabib went for Al, racism at its finest. And so they cheered him on. And it was kind of like a Rocky story where you kind of thought for a second he might be able to do it, but no. That moment was fleeting. It was a total one-side 5-round match, and Khabib ended up rising as the new champion. And effectively, he ended up taking the belt that is around his waist is literally the belt that belonged to Conor McGregor. They stripped the title and gave it to this other guy.
And so Conor was saying that it wasn't going to happen, and no longer. Yeah. They said, "Oh, really?
Yeah, dude.
I guess you forgot who signed."
Well, that lets you know how tough this dude is. For Conor to want to come out and try to do this, if he was really bad, he would have stepped in the ring and went toe to toe with him.
I'm reminded of
he ain't about that life.
I'm reminded of the Hannibal Buress, like where he talks about how he's not a boxer. He's like, "I'm gonna fight you in August, but before that, I'm going to get in really good shape. I'm going to have somebody similar to you in fighting style, and there'll be a whole lot of sparring." No, he went for a hand truck through the side of the bus. Like, how are you going to be really, as a UFC fan, like, you were definitely a UFC fanatic. Like, how do you even, because you remember we discussed some of his habits surrounding the Mayweather fight. Like, and you're a huge Conor McGregor, supporter, of course, which is fine, as am I. I even, the crazy side of me sees his point, but how do you think, like, do you want to see him back in the octagon? Do you want to see him suspended? What do you want? What do you think should happen to this guy?
Well, I think the UFC has to. I think the problem with Conor McGregor is during the Mayweather fight promotion.
Yeah.
My problem with Conor McGregor is Conor McGregor has some obvious tendencies, I'll say that are unsavory for people of different nationalities.
Absolutely.
And he walks that line, and the people who are in power love him to walk that line because they empower him to do the things and say the things that they really want to say, but are too scared to do it. Just like when he was called Mayweather a boy, or he even made some monkey type of comments and stuff like that. Yeah. Exactly. So this is the chickens coming home to roost. This is, what do you expect the motherfucker to do? This is what you push him to do all the time. You clap every time he does stupid stuff like this, and then you expect him not to go a little bit further. Like, so I could understand from his perspective him being like, he's. You got to remember, this guy was he was homeless when they found this dude, pretty much. So, and he's only been famous for about 4 or 5 years. So he's kind of dumb still. He's a male Cardi B. And at
the worst, honestly, and don't take my next comments as a disinterest in what actually he did, but ultimately it's just some property damage and some like it's not like he did some super hard criminal stuff. He did some very stupid things.
Some super hard criminal stuff. No, he did some super hard criminal stuff. Like he assaulted and battered several people. Like in the ring. Like Mike Tyson never did this.
No, he didn't.
Mike Tyson
he bit off ears.
In a press
he at least bit off ears in the ring.
Said, well, no. Let's do a 1-to-1. Mike Tyson in a press conference situation similar to this told a man, "I'll fuck you till you love me." But he never actually did it.
Yeah.
Like he understood the theatrics of it. Mike Tyson had that. He could sell a fight, but he wasn't too crazy. Like, even when you talk about Evander Holyfield butted his head at him. Like, Holyfield was known to kind of be a bit of a dirty fighter sometimes. And he was like, okay, you gonna do this? Fuck it. Then I'm gonna bite your fucking ear off until you stop butting me in the fucking nose. Like, that's what that was about. There was Mike Tyson always... If you go and watch the best Mike Tyson's moments, which I highly encourage you to do on YouTube, it's incredibly funny.
Special.
Anytime he's sitting across from a reporter, and this reporter asks him some questions that obviously they told him not to ask, and he goes, "You're a real piece of shit. You know that? It's like in the middle on national television, he just comes out with it. No. What if I kick your fucking ass right now? Then you think I'm a bad guy? You're a piece of shit. You didn't have to ask that question, but he never did it.
Yeah.
He never did it. And then the best part about this whole Conor McGregor thing is the one movie star who supported him. Any guesses?
No, I have no. I don't know.
Star, the one celebrity in Hollywood who was like, "Hey, sometimes motherfuckers go crazy. Sometimes I understand."
Nick
Chris
Nolte.
Brown. When Chris Brown is defending you, you went too far.
Oh,
Chris Brown is like, hey, well, people get crazy sometimes.
You got Chris Brown defending him.
Connor.
OJ defending him.
That's not what you want.
Hypothetically.
Hey, sometimes hypothetically you got to throw some shit in there sometimes. Sometimes you got to do a little tangs. So anyway, he ended up, long story long, he ended up getting restraining orders filed against him on every single person that he actually harmed or assaulted. Him getting fired from the UFC is the least of his worries. If he can avoid lawsuits, I mean, he's got to fight somewhere, and he's an independent contractor, so it's not like they can fire him. It's not like that. If somebody's willing to pay to see him fight, he's going to fight. He just better hope that the commissions better not take out his license. If they take his licenses away for this stuff, that's where he's in trouble. That's the stuff you got to watch out for.
I gotta imagine he'll get sued to all hell, because he'll get sued by anybody hurt. He'll get sued by Barclays.
Anybody.
He'll probably get sued.
Barclays?
Yeah.
Dude, that's the one that's going to get him.
Oh, yeah,
Barclays.
and even if he settles out, that's lawyer fees he has to pay for each and every case, and as you and I know, that shit adds up.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the tastiest morsel of all of this is the guy he flew over here to defend.
Was there
from
too,
Ireland.
right?
So the guy who... Okay, so he was there, right? He put him up to it, right? He's there when you watch the video because, they filmed the UFC unfiltered stuff, the embedded stuff, all this. So they had cameras on the bus, and not just like security cameras. They had HD quality cameras on the bus, off the bus, and then they had the security cameras too, and TMZ was around too. So it's every single angle they got this thing, what people were saying. And so what you see is after he busts the thing through the window's now busted.
Man.
So the camera can see through, and what they see is a still shot of the guy who put Conor up to this, but didn't know he was going to go that far, and he's doing like this. He's holding his head. He's like, oh no, what have I done? And so, like, now he's in trouble, and he's like, I didn't know this motherfucker was going to do this. I just was going to go talk some shit. Like, this dude is crazy. So, yeah, it's kind of insane.
I can sympathize with that man.
Yes! I know you could. Like, how? How would I supposed to know?
Why?
And he had a fight, and this dude had a fight on the card that night. Dana pulled his fight from the card. So, now not only does he not have any money, but, like, does he sue Conor McGregor now? Like, hey, I know I put you up to this, but I got to sue you.
I got to get some of this money. You know what I'm
saying? Never go full Tupac.
Never.
And then it was time for WrestleMania on Sunday. So the testosterone was super high, as I told you. I had my tall cans of Yuengling. I had my homemade White Castles. It was awesome. It was even... I'm not going to say this was better. I'm just, for the sake of comedy and just every man understands, my wife was not feeling so well, so she was upstairs away from me. So I had the TV all to myself and the crystals all to myself, and the White Castle all to myself and the tall cans of beer all to myself. Men, we love to be by ourselves. We just don't want to be alone. So, I was by myself in the house.
Hey, man, those are secrets that people hey, man, don't be putting them on the game like that. Don't be putting them on the game like that.
I'm just playing with
y'all. Peep game. Peep game right now. Right now.
But that was fun, but it was fun. And WrestleMania, I've talked enough. Nate, tell me what you thought of WrestleMania, bruh.
Did it have a cool Limp Bizkit song?
Let me preface this by saying I have not been I used to really love wrestling, but I've been out of it probably for 10 years. The last time I was watching it regularly was when Shawn Michaels came back. And that was actually my favorite WrestleMania, is him and the Ric Flair retirement match. That still chokes me up to this day. So that gives some insight. So beyond that, I did watch pockets here and there, like when Goldberg came back. Yeah. When Sting came to WWE, like Triple H had that match at WrestleMania with Sting. I don't ever remember WrestleMania being this long, like 5 hours.
It was long.
Damn, like
great point.
Honestly, it put me out of it. Like the final matches, which are supposed to headline the thing. I was like, get it over with.
Those are the most boring matches.
Get it over.
Night.
Yeah. Oh my god.
The match that was the one that was like when it started to tank. Was the AJ Styles,
which I understood was to be like some sort of. It was supposed to be like a wrestling masterpiece.
Boring, dude. Yeah. Boring. And everybody who's saying it's awesome is just a nerd. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
That match, for all of the suspense of it, for Shinsei to do his weird entrance.
Oh, that would I've never seen him before, but it was just odd. Yeah.
He's kind of like a Japanese prince, is what he's supposed to be like. So that was the whole twitching and everything, but it didn't sell for me. And also I thought the Brock Lesnar Roman Reigns match was also really like, it was really obvious. Okay, now I'm supposed to cut your head open now,
dude,
but I'm gonna hit you right at the hairline so no one can tell that we used a razor blade or whatever they did.
Kicking out of, I don't know, fucking 5F5s. I remember when finishers were finishers, you know? And if you kicked out of one, that was amazing. But if that second one hit, you were done. Like, 5, give me a break.
What they were trying to do? They were trying to go do the Shawn Michaels, not Shawn Michaels. They were trying to do the Bret the Hitman Hart, sharpshooter, Stone Cold, bloody face finish. You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And Derek, you might even remember that, where the iconic moment where Stone Cold really, like, Stone Cold was Stone Cold, but he wasn't ruthless Stone Cold until he was in that sharpshooter and it looked like his teeth were knocked out, but it wasn't. It was just blood over his teeth. Like that moment. They were trying to do that. And it looked like Brock messed up and leaked him too bad, because he was bleeding profusely. And you could see Roman corpse a little bit, and in wrestling terms, corpsing means when you break character. So you could see he kind of was like, "Oh, we need to wrap this up real quick. My head is bleeding." But no, it went too long, because it was. Yeah, I got text messages from other people where they were like, "Is it just me, or is WrestleMania kind of long this year?" And it was like, "Yeah, it's really long." But I will say, the best match of the night was the one you didn't expect much out of.
And to be honest, best one of the night. Look, but that's saying the best one out of the night, out of like this bastion of mediocrity. It wasn't like it was some showing of wrestling superiority.
You asshole! I'm not gonna let you talk about WWE.
I always look forward to Triple H's entrances. How dare you? Triple H has the best WrestleMania entrances. You know,
dude, bro. Look, Stephanie looks sexy, bro. Like, Rachel was down there. She came down to watch that match because Ronda Rousey was in it. She was like, all right, Stephanie. Like, I was like, okay. Like, Triple H and Stephanie had a badass entrance, dude. It was like Sons of Anarchy with all females.
He usually does. My favorite, cool. The Sting match from WrestleMania a few years ago, where he came out with, like, the Terminator mask and he was holding, like, Terminator skulls.
Yeah.
I was like...
that's what sucks about Triple H. He gives himself the best entrance of the whole thing because he's the dude who owns the company. He's the COO. Yeah. He do whatever he wants.
He runs the motherfucker.
Like, I think it would be good for the brand if I look good. And then Ronda Rousey and Kurt Angle come out and they have like the mediocre entrance. It's like, damn, dude, y'all ain't gonna give him nothing? Like, come on, man. But Ronda Rousey looked great. Dana White was in the audience. They flashed him up there.
Yeah. The highlight of my night was watching.
She was way better.
Well, I mean, there were parts like when she was doing the quick punching, you know, I mean, punching looks pretty fake in wrestling in general, but when you're going that quick and throwing so many, and you knew she was going to win by armbar.
You knew she was going to win. She had to win.
The highlight of my WrestleMania experience was Undertaker tombstoning Cena.
Of course,
you know,
of course, no doubt.
I watched him for 3 weeks, just whine and whine, and
it did happen exactly like I predicted on the Playway podcast. They did not announce this fight at all up front.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where John Cena was sitting in the audience, and sure enough,
he runs back.
They were like, "Hey, somebody's here. You need to go," and he went back. But the bad thing is that he didn't. He came back in his attire that he had retired. That's what I didn't like. I thought because Kid Rock was the guy, the celebrity being inducted, they were going to do the American Badass revival, but apparently they don't like that gimmick at all. So anyway, I think what they're setting up for is a John Cena versus Undertaker next year. And I think John Cena might retire after that.
I mean, Undertaker, I thought was retired.
He was retired, but
he doesn't look himself. I'm not gonna lie. Like when I saw him,
well, he's old.
Exactly.
Now, he had the liver spot? Do you see the liver spots on his back?
Oh my gosh! Like just stay retired. You know, you had your 2-minute match. You won. You kicked ass. Like let that be it. You know.
Well, I'm almost for certain they're set up for an Undertaker John Cena match for next year. Like it's got to be. It was too quick of a finish. So anyway, WrestleMania was, I will say, as a guy who does watch WrestleMania, so you started out with a guy who rarely watches it, and then you got a guy who watches it religiously every single year. I have my membership for WWE Network. I keep it up and active, especially during WrestleMania season. And it was the best WrestleMania in the last 3 or 4 years, honestly. It was pretty good. Ronda Rousey looked amazing. That opening move she did with the somersault really set the tone for what kind of performance she's going to be. Definitely head and shoulders above other performers on the roster because she's a legitimate athlete and she's just getting started in the business. So that's what's scary. That means she's going to be really good. But anyway, that's going to do it for the sports rundown for this episode. And let's move on to, in the spirit of things, let's just go ahead and play it because a lot of people like to hear it.
Yes, it's time for the Sports Rundown, brought to you by the Playaway Podcast. Take it away, gentlemen.
It's time.
All right, that's right. It's time for the Sports Rundown.
It's time for the Sports Rundown.
Yeah, as your resident podcast DJ, BK, I got to help you get those drops done.
The Player Way.
I know y'all wanted to hear that, but we kind of eased into that section that way, so played it as the end credits for that section. And speaking of end credits, we got to give credit to the Play Your Way Network. These guys are just coming further and further along every single week. Yeah, let's give it up for them.
Absolutely.
These guys are constantly coming along, and it's important that you guys support this Play Your Way Network. We are growing as a brand of media curation, keeping you up to date on the coolest trends.
The Player Way.
Exactly. So that's what we're going to continue to do for you guys. So go to playlifeyourway.com if you want to keep up with all the things we're talking about. And one of the things that we're starting to do every single week, shout out to Ian Robert Parsons, one of our amazing writers, probably our most consistent writer from week to week to week. He came up with this idea of like, hey, you guys have been doing these lists on the podcast, and we want to do a companion the week before to give people an idea of what we think as a writing team. So he gets all of our writing team together. We got a team of about 14 writers. Some of us are a little bit more active than others, but we're all equally appreciated. And so Ian was like, okay, well, what are you guys going to be talking about next week? And we said, well, we're going to be talking about the greatest sitcoms of all time, situational comedies on television. And so he put the list together, and let me pull that up real quick, and we're just going to give you a quick rundown before we do our sitcoms, because that's how we do it on on the Playaway podcast. We're going to help you understand how to get the best out of your binge watching weekend.
The Player Way.
Exactly. While I'm pulling that up, you guys got your list ready?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but it's TV comedies in general, right? It doesn't have to be, because
it's supposed to be sitcoms.
Like, what makes a sitcom? Like, can I pick shows from HBO
I'm glad you asked
Showtime?
that question.
Because I mean, personally, I didn't grow up with a lot of like American television, so I didn't watch very many sitcoms.
It's cool, and that's great. I'm glad you asking that. A lot of people didn't even know, and Derreck said that too. When I mentioned it a few weeks ago, he was like, I bet a lot of people didn't know that sitcom was short for situational comedy. So really, what makes a sitcom is really just any comedy that really... There's two different brands of comedy in American television, and really in television in general, because American television really set the trend for the rest of the world anyway. So, because that's where it started. So, when you talk about sitcoms, we talk about two different types of television comedies. You have either a variety show or you have a situational comedy. Variety show means there's a variety of different types of acts on the show, like Hee Haw, or like In Living Color, or like SNL, or Chappelle's Show. So these are things that are really more of like an independent variety show, talent show type of things, and they don't really have a plot. Situational comedies have a plot, hence the word situation. So essentially there's a premise that kind of governs how the whole show is going to go from week to week to week. It doesn't always have to have a laugh track, even though initially they were recorded in front of a live studio audience. As in Americas, we always heard that before the show started. And nowadays they just have laugh tracks that are not even real. And so you don't always have to have that. Around the late 90s, early 2000s, there were new types of situational comedies. One of the first, in fact, that kind of broke the mold was Clerks. Kind of changed things. Not Clerks, but what's the word I'm looking for? Scrubs. Scrubs kind of changed everything up for everyone. So Scrubs, kind of went a different direction with everything and, had drama mixed into it, mainly because of the backdrop of the show itself. Because eventually if you work in a hospital, somebody's going to die, and dying's not funny. So how do you make that funny? You put treatment of funny around it, but when people die, it's still going to be sad. That was different. You didn't really have that, but even in regular traditional sitcoms, you always had the rape episode, and you always had the child molestation episode. You always had the episode where somebody did drugs, and things weren't so happy. So, in any case, you most likely have sitcoms on yours as long as they don't fall into the category of variety shows. So the question is, do you have like SNL or Chappelle Show or something like that on your list?
No.
Good. Okay, then you're pretty much good for the most part. We actually, and I'm so glad you asked that question, because we had another thing that kind of came up in our discussion board. Somebody, Jay Daniel, shout out to Jay Daniel, he was like, you should record this and put this out for people to see. I think Derreck even said that once too, but that's that's something for us. If you want to join the writing team, then you can have the access. It's part of the perks of being on a team. You can see us arguing like a writing team for The Simpsons or something. And speaking of The Simpsons, that was the second argument we had, is do animation features count? And yes, because animation can still be a sitcom is a kind of like a genre. It's like a subgenre of comedy. Animation is a medium, by which you can do it. Like you have video and you got cartoons and different things like that. So animation is just another medium. You still have actors in it. They're just voice actors instead. Perfect example of this, where it kind of blends the two together, is if you saw the show Dinosaurs back in the day. Dinosaurs was not a cartoon at all. It was live action, but it used puppets. That's just a different type of medium. The Muppets were super huge in the 80s, and as we know, The Dark Crystal was on somebody's list for sci-fi, fantasy films. I think it was fantasy films, actually.
Yep.
So, yeah, but you wouldn't disqualify it just because it had a bunch of Muppets in it. It's just a different type of thing. Or stop motion, which is a different type of animation, or claymation. So anyway, there's different types of mediums that can get you there. So, for example, South Park is like a stop motion done with like crepe paper, but now, that was originally how it was done, but now it's actually done with animation inside of a computer. So there's all different types of mediums. As long as it kind of fits along the situational comedy axis, then I think we're going to be on, and we'll talk about it as we go along. Any further questions before we get going into the list from the writers?
Nope.
All right. We're giving you a quick rundown of what they were talking about. Pulling this up.
You want to start with honorable mentions?
Yeah, we're going to do honorable mentions from
the
team, from the website.
All right.
Hopefully you won't play that video.
No, I won't.
As I'm pulling it up.
Yeah, I'm on the page. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so starting with honorable mentions in no particular order, we have A Different World. That was on NBC. That 70s Show on Fox. MASH on CBS. The Office on NBC. And Parks and Recs on NBC, which a lot of people could argue Parks and Recs
are the same TV show.
But there were so many... Exactly. Yeah. But because of the votes, I had to go ahead and give it to them. And so this is completely written up by our writers. Shout out to that team. Credits for everyone who was a part of that are on the website, so you can go on there and see what they got going on there. And then, of course, it came time for their top 5. Starting with number 5 was How I Met Your Mother. So interesting choice there. 4 was Friends. 3 was Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Number 2 is Scrubs. Number 1 is Seinfeld. So, interesting layout there. I don't want to go into their choices because I got a feeling we might talk a little bit about those. If How I Met Your Mother doesn't come up on anyone's list, I do want to talk about that one a little bit because I have strong opinions about How I Met Your Mother and why I don't think that belongs on anyone's list. But not going to discredit our team. Shout out to our full writing team for being a part of that. Shout out to Nate for helping us out with a little bit of graphics. Nathan definitely inspired our text treatment on there. He did like a infographic that kind of inspired everything. And of course, the video and article written part was largely by myself and Ian Parsons, but Ian Parsons is the chief of this one, and everyone else is the Indians. Bink, shout out to Bink, Darius, Larry, Ian Townsend, Johnny, Jay, and of course Nate and Derek. So there we go on that one. So let's get on with it. Let's get down to the nitty gritty, guys. Let's give us some of these honorable mentions before we get on with the lists.
I'll start. Yeah. Right. I had 3 honorable mentions: Parks and Rec, Friends, and Entourage. Actually,
nice. Yeah. Entourage does fit. So is that the one you were asking about?
No. But that does lead into another one that's on my list. So yeah.
Yeah. So Entourage definitely counts.
Okay.
Entourage is definitely a comedy. When in doubt whether or not something is a comedy, you can go back to the epic conventions of literature, which literally goes back to at the purest form, literature and entertainment has only really 2 forms: tragedy and comedy. Tragedy ends with everybody dying, or most of the people dying, or the people that you actually care about dying, whereas comedy ends with some sort of marriage in the purest sense, or ends with some sort of happy ending. So, comedy, happy ending, you're all good. So, Entourage has a happy ending, you should be good. And if you're a big fan of Entourage, you know it's a comedy. Although that agent guy who played that agent guy, things aren't so happy for him right now. That Me Too movement is no laughing matter.
Poor Ari Gold.
Exactly.
Jeremy.
All right, Derek. What's some of your honorable mentions, bro?
I'm gonna leave one of them off because I feel like when I talk about on my list, I'm gonna give these other ones credit just because this one I feel static. But Reno 911 is that's a hilarious show. You can't not like Family Guy and The League. Are hilarity for me, and just good shows that you can, as Nate would say, put on in the background. But you'd be like, what do I want to watch? Let me watch some funny, just laugh for the next 27 minutes. And there you go. So yeah,
cool. All right, my honorable mentions. One of the things that are on my honorable mentions is probably gonna shock Derek that it's at the top of my honorable mentions list, but I'm gonna wait for that one last. But there are 3 honorable mentions. He named one of them already. Reno 911. Really hilariously funny show. It's almost a variety show. Like that's how good it is. It's like almost like different scenes, but it's done in the spirit of Cops, and it's really, really well effective show. Shout out to Nick Swartzen, man. That to me, that is his funniest character ever on that show. The dude
roller skates to short.
Dude. My second honorable mention is going to be Arrested Development. It would have made my list, but Bink made it was on my list, but John Baron Binkle, we call him Bink on our site, he convinced me that maybe I must stand for that show, because when you think about what's going down with that show and what makes that show work, there's less about that show that actually has worked. It's had a lot of problems technically getting off the ground, and by the time it got off the ground, it was being canceled, and when it got transferred to Netflix, to me, that was the ass end of the show anyway, the way it was just handled. So I think it's a cautionary tale to not put this on the list because it never made the impact. What the show that we all see in our minds with Arrested Development is not the show that's doesn't actually exist, if that makes sense. What we love about that show is the potential of it being awesome, as opposed to it being super awesome. But still, honorable mention, a lot of funny jokes, and one of the other shows on my list will, if not for that show, Arrested Development wouldn't even really be out there like it is. And then, of course, the top of my honorable mentions list is Martin.
Oh, wow.
Martin didn't actually make my list. Yeah, my list is going to be all... And as you guys know, a lot of times my list tends to be more about the impact of something. But all of the stuff on this list made me laugh just as hard as Martin. But again, Martin is one of those shows that never got to see its full potential because of what was going on in Hollywood with black comedies at the time. It got pulled off a lot before its time. And on top of that, the writing wasn't super genius. What made that show amazing was all of the different characters that Martin played. And you could even make an argument that if it wasn't for Martin, you wouldn't even have the Nutty Professor. Because a lot of that stuff that, Nutty Professor came out in 96, but Martin came out in 92, playing all these different parts and stuff like that. So anyway, that's what's going down with that. And now it's time to get on with our top 5 list. So we're going to start off with Nate. Top 5 list brought to you by Agency Cartel. Get you some Agency Cartel, the official comfort clothing for grind time. AgencyCartel.com. Nate, give it to us.
So, as per usual, I go sort of by how many times I've seen these series. Number 5 for me is Workaholics. And we briefly mentioned it last week. I find this show hilarious. I watch it all the time. It's on Hulu. It's fantastic. And, yeah, that's about it.
Cools you off on a warm summer day. I like it. He's just so medical about it. And this is how it is.
Quite refreshing. Yes. Yeah.
Quite refreshing. Cools you on a hot summer day.
Like taking your bra off at the end of the day, huh?
Exactly. Derek, give it to us.
My number 5 is one of the greatest comedic persons that executed this show. It's Curb Your Enthusiasm. Hilarious to me. I can't help but laugh. And if I'm cringing at watching something where I'm like, I don't want to go through this, but I can totally relate with having to confront somebody about something completely uncomfortably. It's incredible. I love that show.
Nice. Really interested to see where another show's going to come up your list, if it shows up at all. If you got Curb Your Enthusiasm on there. And number 5 for me is The Office. If for me, The Office is a better example of what
Arrested
Development could have been. Parks and Recs is not going to end up on my list because it's without The Office, there is none of these other shows, and they don't work as well. The Office did it the best. In my opinion, a lot of people say the UK version is funnier. Nay, not so. The American version, hands down, a lot funnier. Yes, they dropped the ball in the later seasons with some stuff because Steve Carell had to move on with his career, but there are some cringy moments, and Dwight is just... The UK can't beat our version Dwight.
No.
Can't beat him.
Not at all.
Can't beat him.
Not at all.
Can't beat him.
Fact.
And our version of Jim, too.
Yeah.
Like, he's just really cool. You want to be friends with that guy.
Absolutely. You want to know that guy.
Exactly. All right. Number 4, Nate.
Number 4 for me is... This was actually the show that I was wondering about. So number 4 to me is Californication.
Yeah, Californication counts.
David Duchovny is not Fox Mulder to me. He is Hank Moody.
It's a comedy. Yeah, I mean, it's a situational comedy. It just doesn't... It went further into what Scrubs started. Yeah. Scrubs started that off the sound stage. In my opinion, there could be other ones. I could be wrong, but in my opinion, I never saw any comedy off the beaten path like Scrubs do it like Scrubs before Scrubs, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's if Reno 911 counts, then Californication counts.
And I firmly believe he was playing himself because he did go to rehab for sex addiction.
Red Shoe Diaries. Yes.
And also, it is probably 10% of the reason of why I moved to LA in the first place. It made me want to move to LA. It made me want to live in Venice, which now I would never live in Venice. But
unless you were rich, like
not even that. It's like I just knowing nothing about LA.
Yeah.
Before I moved here, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to move there. I'm going to go to Venice. I'm going to walk down those fucking canals like he's doing all the damn time. I'm going to, but
And now you understand why it's such an artsy thing to do in the first place. You're like, oh,
I mean,
that's kind
it's a fucking nightmare to get to. First off, it's nearby no highway. It's just But no, so that was my number 4.
That's what's up. That works. All right, Derek, number 4.
Number 4 is a group of 4 maniacs extended into 5, where every week you don't know where the episode's going to end up, but you can't help but just be right in the thick of them. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Yes,
I knew it.
I love that show.
I know you so well.
Like, they're just nuts. They're just like when Dennis explains exactly what they are. We're just 5 narcissistic adults just screaming over each other with ridiculous plans after ridiculous plan until nobody knows. Like, it's perfect. Like, it's so well done, it's well shot, it's well acted. Just like it's really, I mean, Charlie has a career because of like this show. It revitalized Danny DeVito to me. Like
another
he is Frank
example of
Reynolds.
how another example of how another show does what Arrested Development was trying to do, but actually excelled at it. It's killing me to keep pointing this out and poking holes in my own honorable mention. But it's so true. It makes me so sad for Arrested Development. It never, because this is a show that writing wise was sharper than some of these other shows we're talking about. But for some reason,
this very well may make an appearance later on in the show.
Yeah, I'm telling you, and I understand why, man. But it's when Bink said what he said, I was like, I couldn't disagree with this. But yeah. Always Sunny in Philadelphia is that cringy. We're starting to see a trend in Derek's list.
Yep.
That cringy, awkward.
Like are we seriously about to do this? They actually went to this guy's house.
That's all Reno 911.
Yes.
The Office. The Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Oh yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if Workaholic showed up on your list. But anyway, moving on down. Number 4 for me, again, you see in different impacts. One guy's list is based on how often he watched it. Another guy's list is based on that cringy, smart humor, but also mixed with that dumb slapstick. And then you got another guy who's being a super meta nerd about it, about what the impact it made. So giving you a little flavor of something from everybody, something for everybody listening to this podcast. So my number 4 is the actual, to correct Ian Townsend, it is actually the parent of primetime animation. No, it is not Family Guy. No, it is not The Simpsons. No, it is not even a sketch on the Tracy Ullman show that inspired The Simpsons. It is your modern Stone Age family,
The Flintstones.
The Flintstones is the first. It was the first animated primetime feature. So it was the first sitcom that even had a laugh track along with it when they made their jokes. So without the Flintstones, you wouldn't have the Simpsons.
There's
another show on this list, and there's another show on this list that without the Flintstones and this other show that's on my list, there would be no Simpsons. And the Simpsons really while it was a great series, Simpsons didn't really get really good until Family Guy came out and showed you how it could be even better. Mm-hmm. And the Simpsons got better from the present.
And they got even better when Family Guy came back after being off the air. The Simpsons still had to step it up.
Yes, absolutely. So anyway, the Flintstones, incredibly funny show. If you are old, if you're like young and you never seen the Flintstones before, or if you're old and you watched Flintstones as a kid, you should go back and watch it, because the Flintstones is
adult humor.
It's the Honeymoons. It's the Honeymooners. It's the Honeymooners redone in a way with comedy that could not have been done with physical people. So it's definitely done. I gotta hit the drop. It is definitely done
the player way.
There you go. So the Flintstones number 4 for BK. So Nate, number 3.
Number 3, actually, you mentioned it. It is How I Met Your Mother.
Boom.
I love this show. I got into it late. I didn't get into it from the beginning, but
okay.
I find it smartly written. Again, they do push boundaries. You know, like I love how they talk about smoking weed, but they switch it out with eating sandwiches. So, you know, especially flashbacks where they're just giggling and eating a sandwich in their dorm room. You know, I'm a Jason Segel fan too, so that's kind of what got me into the show.
Hannigan fan.
Oh yeah, and Neil Patrick Harris knocks out of the park with Barney Stinson.
Man, he owes CBS so much.
The bro code
in his life.
I mean, that became a figment or an actual.
What I love about the bro code is so many people bought that book not knowing that he was gay. I love that. And later on, it came out that he was gay. It was like,
I gotta imagine that character was molded and shaped from Harold and Kumar, that first one.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, later on,
and then
I think later in the series, the whole idea of who NPH was became Barney Stinson.
Yeah.
And I even love, like, in the last season where you find out how Barney became to be Barney. I love, like, the story of how he used to be a hippie, but, like, some guy who was like Barney Stinson later in life stole his girlfriend. And so he swore to get revenge on him by becoming that bro.
Yeah.
By becoming that guy. Convinced that man to give him a job. And then he got a job. The guy thought he duped him into getting a job by being the fall guy for like a major multi-billion-dollar company. But really, he was working with the feds all the time. And then when it came out that, like, the guy was like, "Why would you do this to me? You ruined my life. Who are you?" He's like, "Just a guy that served you coffee one time. Just stole his girlfriend." It's like, I love it.
I love that you never know exactly what he does either. Like, he never comes out and
you never really know if Barney Stinson is really his real name. Like, it's just, I love it. Like, everything about Barney Stinson was great. What hurt that show for me, and it's probably what hurt it from being higher on your list, although you specifically said it's based on how many times you saw it, so never mind. But it's the last season of that show.
Oh, it's the worst one.
Wasn't supposed to be. It's the worst one. Okay, so you agree with me.
Because it's all about one day.
Yeah,
and
it is.
It drags on. It really drags on.
And you make this huge build up to this mother, and you meet her. And Derek, do you want me to spoil it for you?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Okay, and spoiler for if you've never seen How I Met Your Mother, stop the podcast right now and come back and listen to it many years from now. If you, anyway, let me move on. How he meets the mother of his children is they share an umbrella, but she's around the whole last season and everything, and she's kind of his second choice. Mm-hmm. She's not, she's like, it's like I didn't really want to be with her, but then luckily she died. So that I can have a second chance at being with the woman I really want to be. And his kids are all about the woman. It's just bad. It's like, man, so you guys, and Barney's journey means nothing because he ends up being a womanizer anyway. He goes back to being that same guy.
You find, that you spend the whole season on them getting married, and then they get divorced within 10 minutes.
Yes.
Which maybe the writers thought that was funny at the time, but it would have been a lot funnier if they didn't spend the entire season, which is 20 episodes.
What happened with that one is it was supposed to end the season earlier, but because CBS needed that show another season, they found a way to stretch it out. That's the reason why that last scene with him talking to his kids is so awkward, because they couldn't bring those kids back to reshoot that scene because they had grown up by the time the show ended. So they had to, so that's the reason why that last scene when he's like not even in the scene with them, it's like a back and forth with the camera. It's because it's really old footage that they had just seen. So that's the biggest issue I had with it, and it's why I didn't make my list, is the technical issues. So that got in the way of the show. But anyway, it's still a great show, and even though we might have ruined some of the show, it makes you probably want to watch it. Like, wow, all of this in a regular traditional sitcom with a live studio audience. Yeah, dude. Very smart show, very funny, and yes, way better and funnier than that Geek Show or the one with Charlie Sheen. Anyway, I said it.
Boom, put a stamp on it.
There you go. Derek.
Number 3 is in my first and only animated series on my list. And follows the
Family Guy.
No,
it's gonna be Archer.
Yes, Archer. My favorite spy.
I know you.
Sterling Archer. What's this door made out of? Adamantium? I don't know. Adamantium and mithril. Like, yes. Like, you can't help the hilarity, Archer, intelligent humor, the cut, the way that that's put together, how one scene begins and ends another scene. It's just, you can't, like, if you're looking up, be like, all right, who am I? You know, Lane Cranston. Who the hell's? All right, let me look this guy up. Oh, this guy actually did fly an airplane in 1933 and crashed because he was drunk. Oh, okay, this is a great joke. I can't believe somebody and just the voice of H. John Benjamin is just great to hear. Because I think it adds to the humor of it.
Bob's
because
Burgers,
yes, I think it adds to the humor of it just because of what H. John Benjamin looks like. Because the first time I saw him was on the Demetri Martin show. And just knowing that he looks like H. John Benjamin, but it's Sterling Archer, this devastatingly handsome guy who just runs across. It's just great, and it's played so well. Jessica Walters plays his mother, Mallory Archer, which her characters are interchangeable from, Lucille Bluth and Mallory Archer. It's the same character. Yes. And it's just a great supporting cast.
It is the same.
They are
looks the same.
They even look the same. Yeah. And I just love
Dressed
it.
The same.
Can watch it anytime. Yeah. Can watch it anytime.
Yeah, what the thing about Archer is if you like Bob's Burgers or Home Movies, if you remember that show back in the day,
Squiggly.
Imagine those shows but drawn very sexily, and that's Archer. It's the same show. Yep. It's just done so much better. It's put together a lot better. But it's just as random as Bob's Burgers. Like the pacing is so similar.
Yes,
it's kind of scary. Even though I like Bob's Burgers better, but anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Oh yeah, Bob's Burgers is hilarious.
It sure is
hilarious.
All right, my number 3 is a show that I hate. I'm a ride for this show, and people might be upset with me for liking it still, but I have a hard time feeling that a man and Malcolm Jamal Warner said this about this show and this guy that. You spend your whole life fighting for people and doing great things, and then something comes out that can't be substantiated one way or another, and in the court of public opinion, this person is guilty. The man is blind now, and he probably did do it, but what people don't factor into it is what was going on in the world at that time, and how consent works, and all of these other things, but that's neither here nor there. My number 3 show is The Cosby Show. Cosby Show, number 3. Cosby Show there are 3 things in my opinion that worked wonders between the 60s and the 90s to make the plight of black people more normal. Black people weren't viewed as people at one period of time. And there were 3 things that made people realize, oh, they're people just like us. 1, Martin Luther King Jr. 2 is Oprah, and 3 is The Cosby Show. Brian Gumbel even said that The Cosby Show did more for race relations than most other things because Cosby Show was actually more liked by white people than it was by black people because it put black people into people's homes. And it was almost like you were watching us in our natural habitat. You're like, oh, so they can be lawyers and they can be doctors and they have the same problems I have and they're not all gangsters and they don't all, do drugs and they don't all are on food stamps. It was cool. It put black people in a different light, and the spin-off of the show did even more for black people, a different world. It started fashion in a different way. And it really got dialogue about. I wouldn't have went to college if it wasn't for A Different World. To be totally honest with you.
So see, that's what you talk about in actual. Yeah. This is give so much credit to when you say how shows impacted. Like that's an impactful show. Like if a spinoff inspired you to go, that's incredible.
People look at what people don't realize. Is people look at. I didn't even know what Greek fraternities was. Except for Kappa Lambda Nu through watching A Different World and seeing all of that and seeing this theme song sang by Boyz II Men and seeing these people do this stuff. And like the theme song even shows you from start to finish what college is. Like it's like you start here and you end up there. This is the journey and this is what the show is about. And Cosby Show was a part of that. They worked really tight into one another. And they did a lot for the culture. And what I love about this story is that after Bill Cosby is long dead and gone, and all the scandals are gone, and the bitches, well, I'm not gonna say bitches, but people who are lying on him, or the people who are actually victims of him are gone, this work of art will still stand the test of time and will still be looked upon because greedy people still want to make money off of it, and they'll whitewash it and it'll be great. So there we go. On top of that, the modern sitcom as we know it within the late 80s to early 2000s were just carbon copies of The Cosby Show. Bar none. Fight me on it. All right, so there we go on that. Number 2, Nate.
My number 2 is not a carbon copy of The Cosby Show. It's something Derreck already mentioned. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I signed up for Hulu just because this show was leaving Netflix, but I could get it on Hulu. I watch it all the time. Like he said, Danny DeVito is Frank Reynolds to me. I love how it's just a show of everybody turned up to 11, and they'll turn on each other with a snap of a finger.
They really will. Treachery.
Yeah.
Did you guys just leave me here?
Because of this show, I have seen Danny DeVito on the floor in a diaper, bald, crawling in hand sanitizer.
And it made sense.
Here's how we're going to beat them. Here's how we're going to beat them at a drinking tournament. Let's inject them with heroin. It's like, what?
Right.
How do we do
But this one goes up to 11. Night, man.
Oh, my God. Man.
You got to pay the troll toll if you want to get
into this puzzle. Are you saying boys soul or boys hole? Get into the boys hole. That's what I'm saying. God, it's just,
I can't wait for the new season.
Nightmare.
I guarantee there's going to be an episode called "The Gang Wins the Super Bowl" because Philly
dude,
did
it has
the Super Bowl.
to. They have to.
Yeah.
I would love to do a top 5 just of my favorite Always Sunny episodes, man. It's
coming.
Yeah, like,
it's coming.
That was, man.
It's coming.
Prom.
Yeah. We might have to do a top 10 on that one.
Where they actually step out and you see, hey, maybe these guys aren't living the exact same way that you maybe think they are. They're actually complete jackasses, and like they actually are like off kilter. And they're
I almost
like,
hope the final season of Always Sunny.
They're in a padded room.
Well, no, I actually kind of hope the last season ends up being like metafilm, kind of like Blazing Saddles, where you realize it's a show, but like they still are like this in real life.
Yeah.
So like that would be funny.
Rob Thomas and Sinbad, like the fact that they had them in this show, like Sinbad talking shit, just hilarious. Oh man, it's a great show. It's a great show.
Speaking of great shows, number 2.
My number 2 only is a number 2 because of the series finale being such a beautiful, dramatic piece of art that I think of it weekly. It's
Are you a Superman?
You love these? Yes, I'm no Superman. I can't do this all on my own. Is Scrubs, starring Zach Braff, and one of the greatest bromance, it's guy love, like ever on screen. And you know, if you don't have
to the point where their reward for being friends their whole lives is that they
became
yes, and they become real brothers at the end of their lives.
It's great.
I love it.
It's a great show. Even the season 9 where it was the interns was okay because it was shades of, but seasons 1 through 8 is the of course core series, and you just grow to have feelings for these characters. Like I miss my friends from Scrubs. Like if a show makes you feel that way, you know they did well by it, and you know it's got a soft place in my heart.
It was a great coming of age tale for an older person.
Absolutely,
So
like you can still relate to these struggles.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Excellent.
Absolutely. And the way they handled death was beautiful in that show as well.
Yep, that's right.
Number 2 for me is probably going to be the deepest cut of the entire list. You got shades of this when I mentioned the Flintstones because I reached way back on this one. I'm reaching even further back to the Black and Whites. To me, this show was pretty much the first. The Honeymooners. The Honeymooners was good. But this show was even better, and it's a show that is still probably on TV in every state, in every country, and it is I Love Lucy. A show that talked about an interracial marriage at a time where that was not something you talked about. They really were a married couple. They brought their comedy of their real lives onto the show, and it was hilarious. Lucille Ball, I mean, some of the stuff that she does is iconic. It's still repeated to this day. And like I said, for a show to be that old, the Honeymooners you don't see as much anymore, but you still see I Love Lucy late at night, different places, and not just on TV Land. So shout out to I Love Lucy. You definitely showed everyone how to do sitcoms.
The Player Way.
Number 1.
Like my comedy movie list, this was always going to be number 1, and I just had to figure out the bottom 4. Number 1 for me is The Office. I have seen this more times than any other show out there. I watch it all the time. I watch the whole series at least twice a year just because I put it on for background noise. You're right, the last 2 seasons weren't as good, although I really did enjoy James Spader calling himself the fucking Lizard King.
Because if you've had a boss like him, you understand. Oh my God.
But to me, I mean,
asshole boss.
This show really sums up what my sense of humor is like. I'm very sarcastic. If I ever wife someone, she would be exactly like Pam Beesly. Still do have the hugest crush.
My wife is Pam.
Yeah,
I love that my wife is Pam. Everyone can claim that they have their wife is Pam, but my wife is Pam. When you meet Rachel, you're like, oh my God, he married Pam.
You know, Mike
Daryl from The Office married Pam.
And I love how these characters are so, you know, like Michael Scott and Dwight are very socially inept, but they balance it out by making them the best salesmen in the place, you know, which is sort of refreshing.
And that's how it is in real life, too.
Yeah. And, you know, who didn't love Jim? We talked about our love for Jim Halpert earlier, about his great directorial skills. And it even to this day, like the finale had this quote from Andy where it said something like, I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them, which is something that I've kept since the actual finale to remind myself to like not take anything for granted. You know, it's, I couldn't talk. I couldn't say enough how much I love this show. And, you know, I probably always will, yeah.
That's awesome. Derek, number 1.
My number 1 is a show that I've probably watched this series 10 times or more. Maybe not so much the last season, but not to discredit the last season. It's Arrested Development. I loved the series when it came on. It was way before its time. I feel like without that show, you would not have had the excellence of Modern Family, the excellence of the Americanized version of The Office.
Modern Family is a huge ripoff.
Like it
just doesn't go as far.
It just doesn't go as far. Like they balance it out with family, quality humor. And Arrested Development was as you mentioned in your honorable mentions, it was a very intellectually humorous show. Like, almost any time I go back, I get another reference because I've learned more in life. I'm like, oh my God, that was extra funny. And Nate, I'm not even going to say what I was going to say because it refers to something else that you haven't seen yet. But it's I just really appreciate that style of humor, the one where it's just, here's a sniper joke that you may not get exactly on impact, but you're going to get it within the next 2 sentences, and then you're laughing about it, and then you realize that the commentary is even funnier, and that's why you'd never turn off your windshield wipers. And then boom, really, Dad? Like, just so many, and just how the story all comes together.
It even pokes fun at human behavior.
Yes.
No other series does it as well. Like, when the person tells a little white lie, the announcer comes on, but he did know that it didn't work exactly right. Because blah, 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 blah. Like, it's like, it just goes into how all of these things happen.
It's so great. No touching. I quote this show at least weekly, if not almost on the daily. There's something. Yes. What is that? Poached salmonella? You know that? Oh, it's a hot ham water. She's the belle of the ball. You've met her so many times, Dad. You've met her so many times. All right, Egg. Like, just there's so many quotables from it. I really enjoyed this show.
And my number 1. I love that all 3 of our shows are a similar brand, but I get to say that mine definitively is the first show like it ever. It was the first one ever like it. And I agree with my writers at the Play Your Way Network. The best show of all times, the best sitcom of all time, is a sitcom about nothing. And it is called Seinfeld. Seinfeld is a show that gets better as you watch it over and over again. It literally is it was the beginning of cartoony sitcoms, where every other sitcom they took the word sitcom so super literal. And what they did with Seinfeld is they said, okay, let's make the show actually about Jerry Seinfeld. So the lead character is Jerry Seinfeld. It really is him. And his best friend is actually, the whole character is his best friend, Larry David. So like it's literally their story, even down to the show is so meta that there's a season
of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
There's a season about how Seinfeld came to be inside of Seinfeld. They're creating a show called Jerry because they can't call it Seinfeld because his last name, so they call the show Jerry in the show. And so, yeah, I mean, the show is, to me, is the blueprint for all of these other shows. There would be no Office. There would be no Curb Your Enthusiasm. Literally, there'd be no Curb Your Enthusiasm because it's a spinoff. It's a spiritual successor, rather, not a spinoff. I mean, there's just so many things within this show. It's incredibly smart. No, I quote this all the time. No soup for you.
No soup for you.
You come back 1 year. I'm telling you, like, there's so many things. The muffin top episode, even down to like naming an episode weird things to kind of entice you on what to watch. Even down to how the show ends, they all ended up getting locked up in prison because they were the worst people. Like, Always Sunny in Philadelphia took what Seinfeld did and they said, let's pick up where they left off. Like, these were terrible people. They did things that didn't make any sense. They did things to themselves that didn't make any sense. They did things to other people that didn't make any sense. People hated them, and down to the fact that everything that they had done throughout the series, they tied up every loose end joke with the last episode. No series has ever paid off that much. Every cameo comes back in the last episode of Seinfeld, and they go to jail for all that shit that they did. It is awesome. So, that to me, the only way Always Sunny in Philadelphia could beat Seinfeld for me is if they figure out a way to tie up all this shit the way Seinfeld did.
I love how Always Sunny did an episode where they tried the gang makes amends. Do you remember that one, Nate?
Yep.
Yes, and it just goes the exact opposite of just like, you're right, like that idea had to been born from some writer up late at night, like, oh my god, I know what we could do with this idea. Like, it provided so much material for not only us as consumers to understand comedy in a different way, to be like, oh, this is the type of show that I could watch, and I could watch different characters do stuff like this. It gave writers a whole springboard into a slew of new comedy era, just to go off this, thanks to Larry David.
I'm gonna go watch Seinfeld tonight. When a black man named Seinfeld over Martin, you know that show is funny. I'm telling you, Seinfeld is funny, y'all. Yeah. It's just, and what makes me sad about Seinfeld, I was too young to get it when
to appreciate it. Oh yeah, it's like
now
you have to watch it.
The older I get, the more I appreciate that show, and the fact that they don't. And the other thing I love about it too is nowadays it's all about going too far with the comedy. Back then they could only go so far, so they did a whole lot with a lot less, a lot more with a lot less. Yeah, they couldn't cuss. They couldn't do man-dramas
and that's something that I always definitely appreciate in a comedy series where you can't default to actually dropping an F-bomb or cussing, where you have to intellectually express your frustrations. That always poses for a great sitcom. Like, and Seinfeld nails it like bullseye every time. Like, it was incredible. Like bullseye. Exactly. I appreciate you using that exact word. Bullseye. Exactly. So, anyway, I was actually thinking more Robin Hood Men in Tights. Actually, just now, that's all I was thinking.
And speaking of comedy of errors, it really reminded me that there's another honorable mention that we did not mention. It's Mr. Bean. If you never saw The Adventures of Mr. Bean,
man, Mr. Bean,
a show that has like no dialogue,
whole slew of
so funny.
Yes. There are a whole slew of British comedy. One of my favorite ones is where he orders pate, not realizing what it is, and to not eat it, he put pieces of it around the table and then complained that there was pieces of food on the table, only to have it brought again. That was incredible.
If you've only seen Bean through the movies, you've been done a disservice. The movies aren't funny. The show is funny.
Yeah, the show is funny.
But
I don't know, the whole drawing of Whistler's mother when he has to draw.
He actually erases it. Yeah, that was funny too.
Oh, that's good. It is good.
But speaking of show, the show has to end at some point, and we've gone pretty long. So, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, thank you so much for coming back another week and spending some time with us. Hopefully, you learned a couple of things. Hopefully, you cracked a couple of funny bones, and hopefully, you're going to agencycartel.com to get your grind time leisure wear. But until next time, I've been your resident podcast DJ, BK, helping you understand how to curate your entertainment
the player way.
Along with my co-captains, Nate.
That's me.
And Derreck.
That's right. Look out for Rampage coming out this weekend.
Absolutely. Rampage is coming out this week. We're going to be talking about that next week. But until next time, no matter what path you decide to take or action you decide to follow, just make sure you're doing that shit
the player way.
We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to the Player Way podcast. Recorded in a single take from Los Angeles, California, Dallas, Texas, and Atlanta, Georgia, by Nathan Peterson, Derek Lewis, and BK Jackson.
And I'm Darren Marlar, the majestic voice of the Player Way podcast.
Our opening theme is titled Bound by Ricky Remedy, courtesy of Elysian Records. And our closing theme is titled Coconut King Diaries by Xander, spelled Zahnder. You can find this music by both Ricky Remedy and Xander, and many more tracks on SoundCloud. And remember, no matter what choices you make or paths you follow, just make sure you do it
the player way.
See you next week.